There was a story circulating last week that really bothered me out of the Hartford Courant in Connecticut, where coaches and parents are questioning the policy for high school transgender athletes. This particular controversy is actually a little over a year old, originating last year when Cromwell High School sprinter Andrea Yearwood, a biological male, began racing on the girls' team, taking first place in the 100 and 200 meter races at the Class M state championships. Fast forward to this year, and there are now multiple biologically male competitors in the Connecticut State Girls Track and Field Championships, including Yearwood returning to defend his titles. Yearwood fell short this year, though, losing to another biological male who shockingly set meet records in the girls division. And when you watch the footage, it's not even fair. You have a much taller, more muscular, obvious male pulling away decisively from young women who simply don't have a chance. And that's what really bothers me about this story, and that's why I'm diving back into it. We spoke a little bit about it on Sunday's podcast, but at the time, I didn't know exactly whose fault this is. Exactly who do we blame for this blatantly unfair policy against hardworking female student athletes? The reason I'm bothered is not because I have anything against these transgender student athletes inherently. I don't care how you live your life, so long as you aren't asking me to uphold delusions. And as long as you aren't harming anybody, I don't care. Be who you want to be, live the life you want to your heart's content. The problem is these transgender student athletes are harming others. The implications of forcing female athletes to compete against male athletes go well beyond just this specific event itself. Remember that every spot taken by a biological male, in every event, on every team, at every point of competition through the championship, is a spot that was denied to a biological female. Those spots aren't just athletic opportunities. They're pieces of experience. They're resume lines that these girls will never have and never offer to future schools or future employers. And not because they didn't work hard enough, not because there's some better training regimen they could adopt in the hope of better luck next time, but because they are simply at a natural, biological disadvantage. They don't have the muscle mass, they don't have the longer legs, they don't have the stronger cardiovascular system to compete. That's the whole reason we have gender-segregated athletic events in the first place. That's the whole reason we have federal Title IX law, to provide young women with equal athletic opportunity in the educational setting. And yet those looking to advance and uphold this policy do all but deny the observable biological reality on plainly delusional terms. Dr. Myron Gunnell, a Yale professor of pediatric endocrinology and International Olympic Committee consultant, says there isn't necessarily much difference between young men and women. According to this Hartford Courant coverage, Dr. Gunnell says because young males in general mature later than females, a biological male may not necessarily have an advantage over a biological female, depending on the age of the person and their development. Quote, "There is no such thing as a level playing field. Athletes succeed because in part of special traits they have or traits that others might not share." Yeah, like a nutsack and testosterone. Those are the primary unshared traits in this case. Or they had the good fortune of having good training facilities and a good training program. Are we really going to go with this athletic performance as a social construct theory? Even though a fancy doctor said it, I was still skeptical of this claim that young men have little or no biological athletic advantage over young women. So I went to Connecticut's high school state championship track and field performance data. I was hoping to see average performances by gender for each event, but all I could find was record performances dating back to 2009. Still, that's useful in that it gives us a benchmark for how top performing men compare to top performing women. There are 20 events available for each gender here. The top 10 performances are recorded for each gender at each event. The data date back 10 years, so we have at least 400 different events with presumably thousands of individual athletes participating. Do you know how many times women cracked what would have been a top 10 male performance? I found 6 out of thousands of opportunities. And how many times did the top performing woman outperform the top performing man? Never. Not once, in any event. Another thing to wonder if what this doctor says is true. If there's really not that much biological difference between high school male and female athletes, why is it that we only see this trans athlete domination in one direction? Where are the dominant female-to-male trans middle linebackers tearing up high school football? Where are the trans female-to-male sprinters putting all the guys to shame? If it's really just about facilities and training, surely we would have seen such a thing by now. And beyond all that, taken to its logical extent, this doctor's reasoning calls into question why we even have gender-segregated athletics at all, at least when the kids are young, and it apparently doesn't make much difference. Boys, girls, doesn't matter, put them all together. Because it's really just a question of facilities and training. Anyway, as I was saying, this denial of opportunities for young girls under the premise of a delusion bothers me a lot. So I'm returning to this story to figure out exactly who I need to blame, so I can be precise with my language and accusations. Until now, I hadn't done the work of figuring out exactly at whom I need to shake my fist. At first, I thought this issue may have been related to the guidelines issued under the Obama administration, directing schools to include gender identity within the scope of Title IX, meaning letting students use the bathroom or play the sports of the gender they identify with rather than their biological sex. But it can't be the feds anymore, I remembered, because those guidelines were withdrawn very soon after Trump took office. And I love the coverage that move got at the time, like this headline from CNN: Trump administration withdraws federal protections for transgender students. It'd be more accurate to say Trump administration allows states and localities to decide how to handle these issues for themselves. This isn't a federal issue, the Trump administration said, so we're going to stay out of it, and we're going to let parents and teachers and school administrators decide this at the local level. And they've done just that, which means the blame for what's happening in Connecticut rests squarely upon the government of Connecticut. And Connecticut state law defines gender not as biological sex, but as gender identity, appearance, or behavior, whether or not those factors correspond with assigned sex at birth. And because the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference, which governs Connecticut high school sports, is bound by state law, and state law says gender is how you feel, not what your biology is, that's how we arrive at the problem we're observing today. Which is why parents in Connecticut are now petitioning to ban transgender track athletes, is what this USA Today headline says, but that's pretty misleading. Nobody's trying to ban anyone. These parents just want the simple fairness of boys competing against boys and girls competing against girls. The petition circulating now is destined for the state legislature and asks for the law to clarify, at least in high school athletics, that competition should be based on biological sex at birth. And this petition itself is actually quite compromising, allowing transgender athletes to compete with their gender of choice, provided they have at least undergone hormone therapy. Still, these parents will be portrayed by USA Today and other hack media outlets as trying to ban transgender athletes altogether. The mom who authored this particular petition has collected 60 signatures so far. That's not much, but it's a start. And she even got the signature of one track coach who says he just wants an even playing field. Another petition is also circulating in Plainville, Connecticut, which itself is off to a start with 88 signatures. And good for them. I hope that one by one they can have conversations to restore sanity and basic fairness and equality of opportunity in their state's education system. And I'm not even involved. I'm not a parent. I'm sitting in a chair 2,000 miles away, but if I did live there, and if I did have a young daughter who was being denied opportunities at school due to these insane gender delusions, I'd be irate. The rest of us who are concerned with protecting opportunities for our daughters can do our homework ahead of time. Find out what the laws in your state say. Find out what the people who govern your high school sports say. Find out what your local school board says. This whole situation is a paradox, whereby the philosophies and laws we have established to expand women's opportunities are now being twisted to deny them opportunities, somehow in the name of equality and inclusion. Well, at least for now, we don't have to deny our daughters those opportunities. At least for now, the federal government is saying, our hands are off, you guys decide this stuff for yourselves. And so I say, let's do that. Let's be proactive, and let's take this opportunity while we have it to decide this one sensibly. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Okay, bye.